Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health. And really, without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You're listening to the sweet, sensual, and serendipitous sounds of Nerdery and Murdery.
Zig, damn it. Welcome to... Wow, what was that?
Huh? What?
Wow, what was that? Welcome to episode 5 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Really got William laughing on that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Will was the giggler.
So this episode comes out July 11th.
July 11th.
I'm Geoffrey of the murdery side of things.
I'm Zig of the nerdery side.
Usually we flip that, and I just flip the script. So
that's all right.
You know,
I think we're okay.
So yeah, we're recording. This is the 3rd episode we're actually recording today. We just stopped and had some Tex-Mex from Taco Casa.
Taco Casa.
Taco Casa, you listening? You listening? That's free ad space right there.
Yeah.
Come
see us.
Good food. I'm full.
Delicious.
I'm really full. William had him some deconstructed nachos.
Deconstructed.
So, sorry, a little behind the scenes on that. I apparently messed up on his nachos, but no,
he
good.
said spread them out, not deconstructed.
I thought it was deconstructed. You know, that's my screw up. So whatever. Yeah, but full from lunch. Good times. Recorded episode, our 3rd episode of the day, as I already said. Other than that, not much else new since we just, saw each other within the last few minutes.
Yes.
Took a little car ride, came back.
Yep. 8 burritos in silence.
I know, right? Other than that, I guess with that, if we want to start on our nerdery side of the day.
Well, awesome. I kind of wanted to talk about Star Trek.
Definite nerd content right there.
Yes, we're going to get into it. Most of this is in my head, so my notes for today say Star Trek, talk about Star Trek.
Of course.
So for the uninitiated, and I cannot believe I'm saying this because I can't think of anybody who doesn't know what Star Trek is, but there are those people out there.
Oh, sure. There are people out there who have no interest in Star Trek. I mean, they do think of it as nerds, nerd culture, and nerd in a negative way. Yeah. Because you have all the conventions that are out there, and there are some people who really nerd out at the conferences.
Yes.
Or at the conventions. They get a lot of the stars that come in. People dress up. All the paraphernalia. Star Trek conventions are huge.
Oh yeah,
they're big.
Yeah,
big. I would say, just as big as, some of the conventions out there.
Yeah. George Takei talks about that a lot. Sorry, the original Instant Zulu. That he went to the first big Star Trek convention in New York, and they were expecting like 400 or 500 people. And this was in the mid 70s, I think. And, like 2,000 people showed up, and he was flabbergasted, and he's been doing them ever since.
Yeah, he seems to be. I don't know the man personally, of course, but he's one of those that really embraces the character and embraces his role in this sci-fi lore. And he seems like a genuinely nice person.
Really embraces
I don't
the fans
know
too.
any different. I haven't heard any different.
Yeah.
Bill Shatner, on the other hand, I've heard can be kind of a jerk.
Yeah. Well,
famously, there was a Saturday Night Live, which it was all over the place that he was just a jerk, and they actually did a parody sketch on him being a jerk. So he's not one for being afraid to make fun of himself.
No,
which a lot of them did. They made fun of themselves. You have even parodies that came from that. Galaxy Quest,
yes,
one of my favorite comedies.
Oh yeah,
is a parody of the Star Trek phenomenon and the lore. Without Star Trek, you wouldn't have had a Galaxy Quest.
Oh God, no.
So,
well, I would say without Star Trek, we wouldn't have a lot of things. I realize that Star Wars is, yes, it is the Japanese movie, A Hidden Kingdom, and it's also Flash Gordon, and I'm sorry, not the Hidden Kingdom, the Hidden Temple.
Kurosawa.
Yeah, Akira Kurosawa.
Kurosawa, thank you.
But it's also Flash Gordon. I think there's a little Star Trek in there too. I think if there was no Star Trek, it probably wouldn't have gotten made quite the way it did.
Most likely, I would agree. When Star Trek came out on the air for the first time,
66
on NBC.
Yes,
it was groundbreaking for science fiction. It's funny as you go back and you look, you see Star Trek now versus Star Trek then, and they have Star Trek episodes that took place chronologically before the original Star Trek, and yet the technology is so much farther advanced, which that's a funny point throughout there. But yeah, it was groundbreaking in a lot of ways. There was a lot of things that came out of Star Trek which broke the rules.
First interracial kiss.
Yes, the first interracial kiss. I know you're going to get into it, I'm sure, but the original pilot episode even had a female first officer.
Yes,
and the station said no.
Yeah, we finally are going to get to see that vision of Star Trek here, I believe at the end of 2021 is what they're planning, maybe either early 2022, with the new series with Rebecca Romaine playing the number one character.
The name of it. Where
No One Has Gone Before?
Yeah.
Or no, Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No, it's going to be really cool to go back and see it. I mean, it had a female first officer. It had an alien as a science officer. And the TV studios were like, no.
Yeah. And a pensive sort of deep in thought captain too. You know, that was the one thing he changed to make it a little more action oriented. He switched out Chris Pike with James T. Kirk, and so it did give a different tone to the show. If you get a chance to check out the Paramount app, they do have the original pilot, The Cage. Dear listeners, you should give that a shot because it's a completely different take on it.
Do you know who's responsible for getting Star Trek on the air finally?
It was Desilu Productions.
Yes.
Lucille Ball.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lucille Ball, almost specifically. One of the original podcasts that I started listening to when my daughter Miranda got me into them was History Chicks. And one of the episodes I listened to was over Lucille Ball. The History Chicks, it's all history about females in history, women in history. And they did one over Lucille Ball, which was really a great episode. And I did not know that until I heard that episode, that it was Lucille Ball that actually ended up getting
she thought it was a brilliant idea. Yeah. She really did. It was like, oh, okay, well, that's really cool. Yeah, let's see what we can do. And she was, I guess, a sort of a feminist hero too, because she was the head of a production studio. Right. A studio. That's not playing around. No. That's not just one show. That's a bunch of shows. So yeah. I don't see, I can see where she saw the value, but then again, I've been watching Star Trek since I can remember. It was on channel 39 here in DFW, both at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon and at 10 o'clock at night, and I watched it a lot.
What's funny is, so I was Star Wars before Star Trek, and that was back in the time where you were on one side or the other. You didn't like both. You were a Star Wars fan or you were a Star Trek fan, and it was, would come to some very heated conversations. And I was on the opposite side. So I would make fun of Star Trek fans and whatnot. I actually had a girlfriend in the 7th grade, that she was a big Star Trek fan. And, I actually teased her about it, ended up getting a date with her. So, but you didn't have people that liked both. It just didn't, I'm sure they were out there, but it just didn't really exist. You really had one side or the other. I would probably say it's only been within maybe the last decade or so that you probably had people who were both.
Yeah,
maybe. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I always kind of consider myself a fan of both. I was a Star Trek fan from very small, and then I was obsessed with Star Wars for a while. But I still watch Star Trek every day. Again, it was on twice a day in our town, in our fair burg. And it was in the early 80s. I also discovered Doctor Who, another great science fiction series from Britain. To most American audiences, the early stuff is fairly slow.
Oh, I agree. I couldn't watch it. You and I have talked about this many times over the years. I couldn't watch the early Doctor Who. I tried because it was like, it was sci-fi and I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch this, but it
real
was
high concept too.
It was way slow and I couldn't watch it. I appreciate them and I appreciate where they took where Doctor Who is now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I just couldn't watch them. I couldn't. Some of the earlier Star Treks were the same way. I didn't really appreciate those more until I got a lot older. I'd watch an episode here and an episode there, but I really didn't go back and watch all the original series until after Next Gen came out. Next Gen was really... I liked Star Trek enough, and I love the movies. I mean, we had Wrath of Khan before that.
Oh, Wrath of Khan was
I saw that. I did see that in the movies because I thought that was exciting. Search for Spock, I thought that was exciting. But really kind of where I went into, I'm going to watch this weekly, Next Gen.
Next Gen, yeah. I really enjoyed Next Gen. I will say this. I even like the motion picture. I know a lot of Star Trek fans do not.
By the way, for those of you out here, I guess I have to say that Star Trek the Next Generation is Next Gen. Sorry,
Next Gen.
We will probably abbreviate a lot of things.
Yeah,
as
we're
going
going to
to
say
here.
things like Voy. That means Voyager.
Yeah.
We're going to say DS9. That is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Enterprise. We may just say ENT.
Are terrible.
I love Enterprise.
Hated Enterprise.
Okay. The thing that bothers me about Enterprise is the theme song, and it's what bothers most people about it.
No, the thing that bothered me about Voyager is it took canon and kicked it out the back door.
You mean Enterprise?
Enterprise.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Voyager.
Voyager?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
And see, and I like Voyager.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Voyager. It's okay, but my favorite character was Kess, and they got rid of her after season 2, and I was pretty much done. 7 and 9 was great, but I like Jerry Ryan. I think Jerry Ryan's fabulous. I don't think you could build a show around 7 and 9, and that's what they did.
She's great in Picard.
Yes,
I love her.
Oh, she's
I love how she is
exceptional
in Picard. Yeah. God, so many shows with Star Trek. I mean, it's just
Star Trek Picard. By the way,
when you go and think about Star Trek Picard, which is out, and I haven't even watched Discovery yet, which I've heard is great.
I love Disco.
I've heard it's great.
Chloe and I obsessed. Okay, the first season of Disco. If you like to hear the Klingon language, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Mary Chieffo, who plays L'Rell, the basically she ended up becoming Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. She speaks probably the best Klingon I have ever heard, and when she speaks it like she's a native speaker. And there are no native speakers. It's a made-up language.
And that's where you get a lot of the people that talk about, wow, these are, in the negative content nerds, is because you have entire groups of people out there that will speak fluent Klingon.
Yes. I said that wrong.
And I have no idea. On Big Bang Theory, they did Klingon Boggle. And that's the subculture that's out there with Star Trek is how people have really gotten into that. Star Wars has it too. Yeah. Star Wars has languages, of course, that people are fluent in. There's Huttese. There are people who know how to read and write Arabesh.
Yeah.
For Star Trek, and those have
that's the language you see printed everywhere in Star Wars.
Yes. And you have entire groups out there. I mean, the most famous of those, and I'll get away from Star Wars here in a minute, but the most famous of those subgroups is the 501st.
501.
That's the largest Star Wars organization out there, and it's so big and so popular that the 501st has actually been used in novels as a stormtrooper squadron.
Yes.
Or company or whatever.
For those of you uninitiated, the 501st are a group of Star Wars fans that dress in full stormtrooper armor.
There's only one Emperor. There's only one Darth Vader that's allowed. Past that, stormtroopers.
Yeah. No, I think there's only one Boba Fett, but there are different Mandalorians.
Yeah, that's kind of how their rules go. So anyway, off of Star Wars, back to where you were.
Back to Trek.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, my notes say talk about Star Trek, so let's do that. Let's just talk about Star Trek.
Well, and so it started in the 60s.
Yeah, it's 66. The original idea kind of got put off to the side. They did film the pilot. It wasn't shown until, I believe, when they released Next Gen, and they showed it on television once.
Oh, as a solo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
I think you're right.
The Cage. You can see it now. Like I said, if you've got the Paramount Plus, and again, if you want to watch Star Trek, if you get Paramount Plus, they have almost everything. They've got almost all of the movies and all of the series.
Well, and and that was an interesting thing that Star Trek did is once Star Trek got popular, they showed the Cage in a 2-part episode of Star Trek.
Oh yeah. They took parts of it and added it into the show.
Well, they showed it because you remember Chris Pike was on trial. And
no, it was Spock.
Spock was on trial. Chris Pike was there as material witness, and they were showing the whole episode
Yeah.
as on the screen.
Yeah.
Never explain where how they got all this
How did they
video.
get all this footage?
But they showed it on the screen, so you had an episode within an episode,
Mm-hmm.
and that was that in itself was very groundbreaking.
Yeah, really, really good too. And the late great Leonard Nimoy just doing his best to be this deep, thoughtful person. You know what? I think that's another thing with Enterprise that I'm sorry to tangent off. It kind of portrayed the Vulcans in a negative light. But I kind of saw it in the original series. Spock was, I don't know, for lack of a better word, kind of arrogant in his non-emotionalness.
Well, but that's exactly how the Vulcans are. I mean,
Yeah.
look at his father,
Yeah.
Sarek.
Sarek, the great Mark Leonard.
Yes. He was very arrogant, very sure of himself, and that's just kind of how the Vulcans are really portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about Leonard Nimoy, and I'm sorry I had to tail off on this. His passing, it was so powerful in the Star Trek subculture. I remember being in near tears when they showed Ambassador Spock died in the.
I cried
in the in the Star Trek II.
Yeah.
The re-release. I was almost in tears on that.
Yeah.
In the Star Trek Online video game, they had a day of remembrance
For Leonard Nimoy.
For Leonard Nimoy, for Spock. They
For
did it
Ambassador Spock, yeah.
on Vulcan.
Oh, nice.
Which was really cool. They had a statue erected of Ambassador Spock, and it was a very reverent scene. I mean,
Nice.
everybody who played the game showed up to be around that statue. It was very touching. Very touching.
Nice. Getting a little choked up talking about Leonard Nimoy. Sorry.
Well, and we all did that were fans. God, I was. That's where as a Star Trek fan, these kind of things just touch your soul. When Anton
Yelchin
died, as the new Chekhov. I mean, that was heart wrenching.
Yeah.
Any of these, Scotty. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
James Doohan. They launched his ashes into space.
Yes, they did. Launched his ashes into space. That's how much NASA loves Star Trek.
Oh, that's how much people love Star Trek, because that's a big thing. DeForest Kelley, that was painful when he died, because that's the culture of it. And I go back to Star Wars for a minute. We saw the same thing in Star Wars. You have the same type of subculture of people that are just emotionally attached to these characters.
Yes.
So there's always meaning behind somebody's death, but these people that we really don't know personally, we know them as their characters, and yet we're so emotionally attached to these characters that people, especially you and I, that have been involved with for 40 years, 30 years.
I'm
for
48, so I would say I was a fan of Star Trek when I was like 3, so 45 years. Yeah.
About 40 for me, because I mean, I like I said, I saw the motion picture when it came out, and I knew then it was not great. I love it. I love it to this day, but I knew then it wasn't that great.
Oh, compared to Search or The Wrath of Khan, it's like the difference between shooting a bullet and throwing it.
Oh, well, not only that, compared to Star Wars, because it came out after?
Yeah, 79.
Because Star Trek saw, oh my gosh, Star Wars has been so successful, we should relaunch the Star Trek series.
An interesting point on that. They were actually working towards re-releasing the series on a network for Paramount, which didn't get off the ground. But they're like, oh, Star Wars did really well. Let's retool it. We'll take 2 of the episodes and make a movie out of it. Except they couldn't agree on which 2 episodes. And when they finally figured them out, they had one writer kind of write them together. And then like that, so I had somebody else take that and rewrite it. And then someone else take that and rewrite it. And It's slow because it was rewritten like 4 or 5 times for
never
no
thought it
good
was-
reason.
I never thought it was slow. I just, it's just in comparison to other stories,
Oh, yeah.
it's not the greatest. Now, I don't think it's as bad as Undiscovered Country. Or no, is it Undiscovered?
Yeah. No, Undiscovered Country is the one with the Klingons.
Yeah. No,
Practice
not
being
that
destroyed,
one. Not
which was
that
an
one.
Incredible movie.
The one before that, which is The Search for God.
Yeah. 5.
Yeah, 5, which I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now.
Oh my God. Neither can I.
Which is funny, but that's the solo Shatner directed.
Yeah.
And that was his ego right there.
Yeah.
We're gonna go search for God.
Yeah. And we're gonna beat him at the center. It's at the center of the galaxy.
Right.
And it turns out it wasn't God at all. It was just this alien who was in prison.
Yeah. Well, you've had godlike characters in Star Trek before. You've got Q, the Q continuum.
Yeah.
Q, who's an insanely popular character.
Yeah.
Tremaine from the original is
Koloth. He is also Koloth the Klingon.
But I'm trying to remember. I think Tremaine.
Yeah.
I think it comes out that Tremaine is Q's father.
Oh, he's a member of the Q.
Yeah. So it comes out in a book later.
I remember you had that book.
I did.
Yeah.
It was a great book. Tremaine pops back up, and he's a member of the Q continuum, and he's some relative to Q. I can't remember which in the book. And Q is. It looks like he's coming back for Picard season 2.
Yes.
The trailer all hints towards it.
Yeah. Well, and John Delancey just basically said, "Yeah, Q's gonna jack with Picard."
I know that you believe DS9 is one of the best out there. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it in that trailer, you need to look because there's a clue that Benjamin Sisko is coming back.
It is the plaque for the emissary of the prophets.
You did know it. You did.
Yes,
see
I did.
It.
I knew
Okay.
exactly what it was when
Okay.
it came across. It is the plaque for the emissary of the prophets.
Right. So there's a rumor that Benjamin Sisko might come up in season 2.
I watch DS9 almost nightly. That's how I go to sleep.
And DS9, see, and the problem. So here was the problem with most of the Star Trek series, starting with Next Gen and going forward. You almost had to give every new iteration of Star Trek, and that's changed now with, I've heard, Discovery and of course Picard, but you pretty much had to take the first year and just make it through.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of bad story, or not necessarily bad, but they weren't the greatest of stories, they weren't the greatest paced. Next Gen went through this.
It takes a little while. A lot of people say that the problem with Next Gen was that Roddenberry had rules in place, and it wasn't until after he
died and Berman took over, Rick Berman.
Yeah.
Because
that's when it really got good.
Well, and when people talk, let me come back to that because let me finish on this point, and then I'll come back to Rick Berman. Don't let me forget that.
We're going to go long on this one, folks.
Yeah, we absolutely might. This might be a 3-hour one, so hope you're on a road trip for this one. Hi, William. How you doing? Doing good over there? All right, great.
This?
Love it.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think he watches Star Trek.
I don't think he does. I think he's going to go to sleep. He needs some nappy time after eating lunch. So, the series,
glaring daggers.
you give like a year because that's how it was for Next Gen, and by season 2 it really picked up.
Yeah.
DS9 had that same year on year 1, but I dropped out because I'm like, I just can't do this, and I've never gone back. And that's what I've heard was my mistake is I needed to go back and stay with it. Voyager was the same way. Now, there are some people that say Voyager never really picked up. I'll disagree with that. But Voyager, the first season was pretty rough, and you had to make it through it. I'm telling you, the later seasons I thought were some really, really good stuff. After they encountered the Borg and they started adapting Borg technology, I thought there was some really good stuff. Enterprise, I hated it from the get-go. Couldn't stand it, hated it. The whole, I'm going to spoiler alert right now, the whole bullshit thing that the entire series was one holodeck.
It wasn't the entire series. It was only the last. I went back and watched it about a week ago
Such
just to
fucking
verify
bullshit.
this information because I knew we would be talking about it. It is only the last episode that it's that bullshit Riker watching it in the holodeck.
That's as bad as Bobby Ewing.
Yeah.
Coming back in Dallas. I mean, that's exactly
It was
what that
Pam's
is. That's
dream.
Yes, that's a Bobby Ewing thing, and that's bullshit.
We'll explain this to you later, Will. We'll go through it. It was a soap opera that ran at night called Dallas. It was
Yeah, there was a whole season that was negated because someone had dreamed the whole season.
Yeah.
Because the season was so bad, the writers like, oh crap, we've got to fix this because this was a TV show, Dallas.
Somebody call Patrick Duffy. We need to get him some more money.
They killed off one of the major characters, and there was such fan backlash, and the entire season was just not great, that the very next season, the killed off character's wife wakes up, hears the shower, goes in, and there's her dead husband standing
in the shower.
This was classic TV, and they negated an entire year.
Oh yeah,
of the TV show Dallas.
And it was so secretive that they filmed it in a warehouse in like Oregon where he lived.
Yeah.
So it was just up the street from his house, and they had this fake shower, and just so they could get that one scene, and nobody knew about it until they showed the scene.
Yeah. They had to backtrack on everything that had progressed in the show. They had to go
There was
back.
a sister show called Knots Landing that also had stuff that was directly related to that death that they backtracked all of that too.
Yeah. Yeah. To completely retcon the whole thing.
Yeah. You know what? If I'd have been in that writer's room, I would have tore my hair out.
Wow. I lost where I was. So the seasons and everything. Rick Berman. So the whole thing, Gene Roddenberry left because Gene Roddenberry, one of his rules were within the Federation, within Starfleet, there was no internal conflict.
Which makes for a bad television show.
A lot of people will say so.
Yeah.
You know, you might have a little minor argument here or there or a spat, but he didn't allow these very grand opposition of each other. And that's what Rick Berman brought in. Once Gene Roddenberry had passed, Rick Berman changed things. And there's a lot of people that say Star Trek has now been Bermanized or Bermanized. And there's a very definitive line you can see when Berman takes over. Because you
start 3.
I think so.
Yeah.
You've got the internal strife of the love triangle of Worf and Riker and Troy.
Yep.
That's something Roddenberry would have never put up with.
No, he would have never gone.
And it's really kind of funny too, with Majel Barrett being Gene Roddenberry's wife. She survived him. I never heard that she ever protested that or anything, or she just,
matter of fact, she went before she died, before she passed away, she went into a recording booth and recorded every possible iteration of sound. So basically, she recorded syllables, every one that they would ever need, so they could continue to use her voice for the computer. Yeah,
Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, his wife Majel Barrett, not only was she a cameo on the show, she is the voice of the computer for forever.
Yeah,
forever.
Yeah, when they use a Federation computer, it's her talking.
Yeah, it's always a really cool thing. Yeah, yes. She was Nurse Chapel.
Yes, she was Nurse Chapel. And when we were talking about her being she was originally the first officer, she was number 1 in the pilot.
Yes.
Which we are now finally going to get to see. I have
a new iteration of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a slightly different take on Next Gen and Voyager and DS9. I would say that, yes, I think it was better after Roddenberry was no longer with us, which makes me sad to say because I love Gene Roddenberry. He created this.
Oh, I don't think it was better. I think it was just different.
DS9 is about conflict. It starts on a world that had just been liberated, or not liberated. They liberated themselves, and their world had been basically strip mined for 50 years. And it's how they come back into the fold. They weren't a Federation race. They were actually older. They were called the Bajorans. They're the ones that had the prophets and the emissary. So that first episode, I would say that the pilot episode of DS9 is as good as anything else.
See, I just didn't like it.
Episode 2.
Okay, so here's another thing with DS9 for me, because I remember talking about this, why I didn't stick with it. I also didn't like the stationary Star Trek.
Yeah.
We're on a station, we're not going anywhere major. Everything's coming here. And I didn't like that. I like the exploration being out. Had I stayed with DS9 as they go into the continuum and they go to the Cardass, who the heck are the
Dominion?
Dominion.
When they go into the Gamma Quadrant?
Yeah, when they go into, then we've got some travel because you got Worf that comes over from Next Gen, and he's got the Defiant.
Yes, the Defiant. The Defiant is the baddest ship in the Federation.
And that's what I've heard, that if I could make it to Worf coming in with the Defiant, then it would be my type of show.
They get the Defiant by season 3. Worf comes in season 4. So they've actually got a season without Worf, but they have the Defiant, and that ship rock and rolls. As a matter of fact, it is so powerful, it has a tendency to want to tear itself apart. You have to have a good engineer, and they had, they make a joke about it on on Star Trek Lower Decks that the greatest engineer in Federation history is Chief Miles O'Brien. Because
is it O'Brien that becomes the engineer of Defiant?
O'Brien is the engineer of DS9.
Right, I know that.
Yes, and he's the reason why the Defiant doesn't tear itself apart, because she's overgunned and she's overpowered for a ship her size, because she's small.
Oh yeah.
Frigate size, I think, is what they say.
I think that's even small for a frigate, but maybe.
Yeah, it's essentially, so you got a big old Starship Enterprise. You take the big old Starship Enterprise and take about half the saucer section, and that's the Defiant of a Galaxy class. Oh yeah, and so there are different classes of the Enterprise. I guess we should talk about that too.
Sure. I mean, well, it's so here's where Star Trek influences real life. Mm-hmm. The very first space shuttle was the Enterprise.
Of course, it was.
There's the Enterprise carrier, aircraft carrier. What else we had that was an Enterprise that was big? I can't remember, but I mean, that influenced the Navy. It influenced NASA. But yeah, so but you go to the Navy. The reason I came to the Navy had the same thing. You've got the different classes of vessels, blah, 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 blah. You get the exact same thing in Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah. We've got the Enterprise A, which is a Constitution class. It's an Explorer class ship. 17 NCC 1701 is the original one. They replace it after they destroy it in the Search for Spock with 1701
Well, it's been refitted in the motion picture.
In the motion picture, they refit it. Then it gets destroyed, and they're given another ship, and they rechristen it the 1701A, which is also a Constitution class.
And also gets destroyed.
Then you have the 1701B, which is an Excelsior class ship.
Correct.
Then you have
Let's see if he gets all these right.
Yeah, and then you have the 1701C, which only showed up in one episode of Next Gen, and it is a Nebula class ship.
I believe you're correct.
Yes. And then you have the 1701D, which is a Galaxy class ship. And then you have the 1701E, which is a Sovereign class ship.
Correct.
Boom, boom, boom. Nerd it out, people.
I think Sovereign was my favorite design. That thing was so sleek.
Yeah. You know what? And I like the C. I like it was like a cross between an Excelsior and a Galaxy class. I thought that was a really pretty design. And you only see it once.
And the D took a while for me to warm up to. I wasn't a big fan of the D at first. I thought it
looks top heavy.
Yeah.
It looks top heavy.
Yeah, and I didn't like it at first, but then that really grew on me.
Oh yeah, I had a giant poster of it in my room.
But the Sovereign, that's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite design.
Yeah, that's the one from the Star Trek. The First Contact.
Yes,
and on. That's a good looking ship. That's a real good looking ship. Sexy.
It's funny how many times in the movies they destroy the damn Enterprise.
They just crash it.
At some point, somebody's just going to go, no, you get no more.
No more
There's
ships. No more ships.
No more Enterprise. You're done.
We're calling this the Excelsior. Oh, Sulu becomes commander of the Excelsior. That was, which is one of the best scenes in Star Trek. They're sitting on the ship. He's talking about doing a cruise, examining. He was examining stellar something, and he sets his tea down, and it starts to shake, and the whole bridge just starts to shake. And he's like, "Sir, a massive wave!" And he yells at his helmsman, "Turn her into the wave!" And they ride it out just like they were a giant fishing boat, and they run this wave. And it's like, "It's the Klingon moon of Praxis, sir. It's been destroyed. Should we tell somebody?" And he looks at the guy and goes, "Are you kidding?" Best scene ever.
Which goes into the reboot where they do so many callbacks to Star Trek. They have the one where when Kirk asks Sulu, "Do you think you can fly this?" And he turns around and says, "Are you kidding me, sir?
Are you kidding me?"
We had all the movies that were really so good. I know there's a lot of people out there that hated it, but it's still one of my favorites, and I love it. I know Chelsea loves it too. It's one of hers. Voyage Home, the whale flick, the Save the Whale.
I love the whale.
I love that.
It takes place on a Klingon bird of prey. How can you not like it?
In the 80s,
yeah,
because they time travel back
to the 80s. Yes, and Spock curses.
Yes,
every other word is damn or hell.
Oh my God,
I will not damn hell.
I will not damn hell. Double dumbass to you.
Well, double dumbass to you.
Voyage Home was really, really good.
Everybody remember Willow Park.
That was part of a trilogy that started with Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home. Yeah. Because that was really all one linear story.
Yes.
Versus the other movies where time has passed and other things have happened. Those three movies were very much in a progression. I mean, granted, they're all along a certain timeline.
Yeah.
But the events from Wrath of Khan directly affected 3, Search for Spock, which directly affects 4, Voyage Home. But then when you get to 5, it's not that way. It's a whole new story. We've got a whole new story.
Yeah, they've been running around the galaxy for a year or two.
And then you stop again. You've got 6. That's a brand new storyline. And you stop again. You've got 7. And so from that point on, it's never really a continuation of the previous, but same timeline. At any rate. So.
I love Star Trek.
Do you?
Yes.
I do too. We could probably talk Star Trek all day long.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've really given any information about Star Trek. I really don't. We've given a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so Star Trek was originally penned by a gentleman by the name of Gene Roddenberry, who we both love. Originally in the mid 60s. So they originally made the original pilot, The Cage. And he was able to sell it to Desilu Studios. Lucille Ball picked it up. She thought it was a great idea. Really interesting. But when they tested it with some people, they didn't like the idea.
I think we actually got to this point a half hour ago.
Yeah.
And we're just now coming back
to
it.
I think we
were actually here.
I told you this was going to go long. Because I expected to. Again, my notes say, talk about Star Trek.
Right.
So they greenlit it, but they wanted to make some changes. They wanted to get rid of the alien, and they're like, no, the alien being on the crew is is non-negotiable. So they replaced the first officer with the alien.
Right.
So he was both science officer and the first officer, which I think effectively is a bad idea. But hey, that's what they had to do. That's how they kept Spock. And they changed the captain from being this pensive captain to this more action man captain. So the alien could then be pensive. Well, they made it part of the aliens thing is that Vulcans are non-emotional. They study logic because in their history, they almost destroyed themselves. They had a nuclear war on their planet because of it. They explore that in Enterprise, which again, Enterprise was a series that came along in the early 2000s, and it was about the time period before the original series. It was 100 years before Kirk and Spock. I think the thing that people are most bothered by Enterprise, besides the canon, is, okay, so there's a cold opening, which started with DS9. There's a cold opening. It may have started with Next Gen. Well, they'll do a little scene, and it's got incidental music, which is a orchestrated music that they used all throughout Star Trek, from Next Gen all the way until now, right? So they break that cold opening, and then they go into this late 80s, early guitar-y pop rock song.
Yeah, I hated
called Faith of the Heart. It's not so much. Effectively a bad song. It's not a great song.
I hated it.
It's an abrupt change from that bum 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 music to "It's been a long road." Yeah. And then they go out of that and then go right back into the bum 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 bum. It's jarring.
Yeah.
It is jarring. And I don't know anybody who likes it.
That's been one of the many things I hated about that show. I just couldn't. I could not stand it. I couldn't. I literally made it through 3 episodes before I bailed on Enterprise. I'm like, nope, I'll never watch another episode of this again. It was they literally thumbed their nose at canon and threw it out the door. And yeah, I know people have done that before, or have done that since. You know, Disney is doing that with Star Wars now. I go back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Disney is taking all the canon, what we built up all over these years, all the books and the comics and everything, and are saying, yeah, no, that never happened. They're calling them the legends now.
Oh, that didn't happen.
But they're not directly flying in the face of it like Enterprise did.
Yeah.
Enterprise directly flew in the face. I mean, they met the Romulans too early.
They met the Klingons.
The Tholians too early.
Yes.
I mean, they met them all early. Whereas the Federation, the original Enterprise were the first to run into the Tholians.
Yeah.
They were the first to run into the Romulans.
Yeah. No, they'd had a war with them.
They had.
But no one had ever seen a Romulan's face because they didn't know they were Vulcans. Romulans and Vulcans are basically from the same species.
But in Enterprise, if I recall correctly, they went to Romulus.
Yeah, they actually met. Well, okay, they didn't see him face to face, except that the head of the High Command in Vulcan was actually a Romulan, but nobody knew it. But yeah, they didn't meet any. They didn't meet them face to face. They did see some Romulan ships. They ran into some Romulan land or space mines too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and the Romulans were basically toying with our section of the galaxy, trying to keep everybody apart because they saw that they would have trouble if these people got together and, formed a federation, as it were. That all happens in Enterprise. It's really good. Fast forward past the sound bite. I start with season 2. I'll say the same thing about DS9. Now in season 1, there are a couple of episodes like Duets is in season 1. It's the first time I ever cried when I watched Star Trek.
Oh gosh, no, for me, well, and Next Gen was still going on when DS9 was on.
Yeah.
So, I didn't watch that, but for me, it was the Next Gen episode with the probe where Picard lived an entire life.
Oh, and the flute.
Yes.
Oh,
that one.
Oh, God, that was sad.
Yes.
That was so sad.
Yes. And I go again to the culture, that's something that shows like this, Star Trek, Star Wars, you have Doctor Who, you have such an attachment that you can actually be sad for things that happen with these people. Mm-hmm. It's just a fascinating concept.
Duets. So Kira, who is the second officer in Deep Space Nine, she is a member of the Bajoran militia. The Bajorans are the people who were invaded by the Cardassians and had their planet strip mined, and they were put in concentration camps for 50 years. So Deep Space Nine takes place like 10 days after that ended. She finds this Cardassian who had kind of basically come along, and she figures out that he is the Butcher of Galatep. Galatep was a concentration camp where they sent people basically to work to themselves to death. And so she throws him in jail and she's talking to him and they figure out he's not that guy. That guy's dead. What he is a filing clerk from that place and he couldn't do anything about it. So what he did was he changed his face to look like this person so they could pay for what they did. That at some point, and when he breaks down and admits that because she's already figured it out, she lets him go. And it's so up until 6 months before that, she was fighting these people effectively. Kira was a terrorist. Yeah, Kira was a terrorist.
All right, I remember that.
Yeah. And the way she defends him near the end, it's oh my God. And that's in the first season. Now, I would say the episode before that and after that, terrible. They're not great. But like once you get to the second season, and that's the thing about Deep Space Nine. And again, I know I keep talking about Deep Space Nine because it's my favorite. They fight the Bajorans. They fight the Klingons. They fight the Cardassians. They fight the Dominion. They fight the Federation at one point. I mean, there's a lot of fighting in DS9, and I think that's why you like it. But it's also there's a story arc. They were able to do that because before that, everybody was talking about syndication. So every episode had to be a standalone episode. It couldn't affect the next episode in case they wanted to show them out of order. Syndication is not a big deal anymore. So I think that's why DS9 lives a little better now, I think, than it did before. Because it was the redheaded stepchild of the series.
Right.
And again, Voyager's not bad. I mean, they have a story arc. They get lost in a different part of the galaxy. And what are they, 80-something years away? You've probably seen more Voyager lately than I have.
Oh, I wouldn't say lately. I mean, I'd say it's been at least 6-7 years since I watched Voyager, but I think it was more than 80. But it was far. I mean, at Maximum Warp, originally at Maximum Warp, they were potentially not going to be able to get back in their lifetime, I think. Yeah. And they had to figure out different ways to cut the trip short. I can't remember anymore how much time away they were, but it was far enough, far away from home. They couldn't get a signal home. There was no help. They were out there alone,
all by themselves. They eventually figure out how to get signals back and forth.
Yeah, last season I think it was. Yeah. Well, because they were close enough. They had done enough. They had done enough jumps through various means that they were able to use some Borg technology. Mm-hmm. To boost the signal to get it home. And so, I think it was once a week they got messages from home and they could send them back.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, but they'd already been out there for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, a lot of things has changed. And it's because Voyager ends up making it home, spoilers, that the Federation is prepared for the next Borg invasion. Yeah. Because they have some Borg technology that they've adapted now. And they're able to better defend themselves that way.
They really kind of hurt the Borg too. Yeah. Finally.
Yeah. Not just hurt them. They hurt them badly.
Yeah. Them and that strange alien race from the other dimension, what species 8572 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that species comes up in the Star Trek Online game too, and I can't remember which. Something I was thinking about as you were talking, I lost it for a second. I really hate that you never got to go to Las Vegas when the Star Trek experience.
Oh yeah, I really wanted
because
to
they had Quark's Bar.
I love Quark's
in
Bar.
There. The simulation in the shuttle, that was a lot of fun. It was a pretty cool little setup, and I mean at the time it was the Las Vegas Flamingo Hilton, I believe, if I remember right, or maybe it was just Las Vegas Hilton. It might have been just Las Vegas Hilton, but anyway, they had retooled the entire casino so that the waitresses were wearing female Starfleet
Oh, nice.
They did the whole casino Star Trek themed.
Oh, wow.
While it was there, so I'm glad I got to go. It
Yeah.
was
Just so
a lot of fun.
they tear the hotel down. Is that why they quit doing it?
I can't remember if the hotel's there or not, but the Star Trek experience closed down. There was at one point, and I think it was Las Vegas, that they were trying to build a giant replica Enterprise.
Whoa.
I wouldn't say life size because that's city size.
That's a building.
Yeah. But yeah, there was talk about trying to build a super large Enterprise.
Nice.
That would have been I would have loved to have seen
super cool.
that. Yeah. In the way technology's gone now and everything like that, you may be able to get a Star Trek experience again.
Yeah.
You've got the Void out there where you can do the Star Wars experience. So there may be options for Star Wars or Star Trek ones coming up. Depends. Actually, I had to take a pause and look it up. So it was going to be a life-size Enterprise.
Good Lord, that's gigantic. We also looked at the time. We've gone on a little over 53 minutes on Star Trek. We're going to have to make this a two-parter, peoples. If you want, you can email me, and I would be happy to discuss Star Trek because I can discuss it all day.
Oh, we both could. Because it's one of those that we've both been a part of for so very long. Like I said, I was originally a Star Wars and hated Star Trek and hated it for all the stupid reasons and being a kid, number one.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I do. I think we could go and go and go and go and go with that.
Yeah, this would be a 3-hour show.
Probably.
And then we would get no murders. And this is nerdery and murdery.
Oh, that's true.
With that, please, sir.
All right. So off to the murder side of the house.
Woohoo.
This week, what I'm covering is the murder of Ingela Hogland.
It's another hard name.
Another hard name. There's a couple of them in here. It's not horrible. I did try to kind of put some parentheses pronunciations in my notes to get some of the harder ones. For this information, I did get my information off Wikipedia, True Crime Central Sweden, a study in crime on Tumblr. There was a Reddit subreddit about this, and there was a video called "The Killer Caught on Camera: The Unlikely Arrest of Anders Eklund," and that was on YouTube. Where I got this. So this takes place in 2000.
Oh, wow.
So on June 4th, or it starts in 2000, on June 4th, 2000 in Falun, Sweden, 31-year-old Pernilla Hellgren was found murdered. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted. A young girl on her way home witnessed the attack. Told investigators she saw a man following Pernilla, who, as it turns out, was on her way home from a party in Central Falun. I believe it was her birthday party.
Aww.
If I remember, I may have saw that. She said she saw a man on top of Pernilla on the path below a bridge that the girl was traveling over. She went home, she got her friends, and they ran back.
Why not call the police?
I know, again, why not call the police?
The police.
But she didn't, and they called, she got her friends, and they ran back, and all they found was discarded clothes and no body. The police found Pernella's body later that day, where she lay naked in the woods nearby, and dog went off again. The man was described to police as having a large stomach and a double chin, and he looked like a stereotypical truck driver. Remember this.
Stereotypical truck driver.
That's what they said. Several arrests were made, and they produced a list of 64 potential suspects from this is a good one, Gävleborg. It's spelled Gavleborg, but it's pronounced Gävleborg.
You're making that up.
No, because I had to back up the video and listen, and I had to write it down exactly as it sounded. Potential list of suspects from Gävleborg and Dalarna.
Was it the Swedish chef from the Muppets? Because
it was not. It was definitely not the Swedish chef from the Muppets.
Okay.
But for some reason, the case went cold. The list of suspects from Gävleborg were never looked into. This is also important. In 2006 and 2007, police received tips naming Pernello's murderer. Actually gave his name. But these were ignored and never followed up on, and the tips would turn out to be correct.
What? They didn't even look?
No. As you'll find out, it was kind of police missteps all the way around. So they kind of take a little bit of a fault in here for where we go next.
That surprises me about the Swedes.
Right. We move forward to April 5th, 2008, and 10-year-old Ingela Junkosa Hogland, or I'm sorry, it's pronounced Hergland.
Hergland.
She was on her way home from soccer practice in Schwensen. I have to spell this for you. Let me spell how Schwensen is spelled.
Schwensen.
STJARNMUND.
Oh, shit. That's pronounced Schwensen.
I'm telling you, I had to back the video up multiple times to go, wait, what? Really?
I think I know what the problem is with the Swedish police. They were having trouble with their spelling.
Well, and one of the things I do when I'm watching these videos, I turn on closed captioning because I want to read what they're saying, and I'll jot down notes as I see it.
Yeah.
So when I see something like that and I hear Schwensen, I'm like, whoa, back up.
That can't be Schwensen. What is that?
So she was coming home from soccer practice in Schwensen, Sweden. This is a town of only 160 people, and it's 120 miles from Stockholm.
Oh wow!
So it's a small town.
Yeah.
Ingela at the time, she was only 3 miles away from home.
Okay.
She called her mom and said she really wanted to ride home today rather than be picked up as usual.
Oh.
From her mother, Karina Hergland. I got to remember that Hergland. And she apparently had to beg her mother. Hey, I just really want to ride home. It's nice.
Yeah.
Please let me. And so her mother agreed, but she said the condition is I want you to call me every 10 minutes till you get home. At least trying to be cognizant that she's got a 10-year-old out there all by herself.
Yeah.
So that was the deal.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's not a lot of crime in Sweden. It's pretty crime free. Especially a town with 110 people.
160.
Oh, I'm sorry, 160. Apologize. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not a lot of crime. So I mean, right. You would think you would be fairly safe.
You would think so. So during the ride home, her mother, Karina, she called Ingela to check on her progress. She spoke with her on the phone, which is perfect. And when she estimated that Ingela was only 20 minutes from home, she decided to allow Ingela some independence and not call again.
Okay.
So she left her alone at this point. Well, time went by, and Karina began to worry because Ingela had not arrived home in the time she thought she would. She called Ingela, but there was no answer.
Okay.
As a parent, that I know that's freaky. Mm-hmm. It's happened with my daughter where she didn't pick up the phone. It absolutely freaks you out. So Karina did begin to panic, and she decided to drive to look for Ingela in case maybe she had decided to walk or had a flat tire keeping her from coming home. Some reasonable explanation.
Yeah.
She drove to the community center where England had been practicing. She checked friends' homes in case she had stopped there, but Ingela was nowhere to be found.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
No, it's rarely good. I don't tell a lot of happy stories.
The last lady lived.
She did, but her friend did not.
Yeah, that's true.
Karina saw some people she knew who told her they had seen Ingela on her bicycle not far from her home and assumed Ingela had arrived. So, people, again, small towns, so they're like, oh, there's Ingela. She's not far from home. And so they go about their business. They don't think anything different. So Karina kept driving, and then she noticed something in the woods. It was Ingela's bicycle, and it was left abandoned about 200 yards from their home.
200 yards?
200 yards.
Wow. That's practically snatch her from her yard.
Well, to make matter worse, Karina noticed a set of tire tracks that looked like a car had sped off from the scene.
Oh.
So police were called immediately and began a search. They sent out boats. They sent out a helicopter. They began gathering volunteers at the local school to assist with the search. People searched everywhere, including abandoned buildings and even wells. There was no sign of Ingela anywhere. Unfortunately, days passed.
Okay.
And, people were really losing hope that she'd return alive. By coincidence, there was a local man named Thomas Langton, and he had been out walking with his wife and friends, and he had a new camera. He had a brand new camera, beautiful camera that he wanted to try.
Yeah.
And it was right about the time of Ingla's disappearance. Thomas believed he had evidence concerning Ingla and had got the evidence through sheer coincidence.
Oh, wow. He was taking a picture of something else, and he caught it in the background.
Well, so what he was doing, he took pictures, and he decided to check how the camera reacted to objects moving.
Yeah.
And he saw Ingla.
Just tack, 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 tack.
Yes.
Tack. Okay.
And he saw Ingla, and he took a picture of her at 2:16 p.m.
Okay.
Then he saw a red Saab, and he's like, oh, here's a faster vehicle. I'm going to test this one out. So he took a picture of that as well.
Did he get the license plate?
55 seconds later, at 4:17, he not only got the license plate, but that there was a person inside.
Okay.
The photos came out perfectly. You could see Ingla on her bike, again, the car, perfectly with license plate. So he contacted the police. Excuse me. One of the officers on the case then contacted the owner of the Saab, asking him if he had seen anything strange that day. Oops. So the officer didn't know at the time.
Okay, I did not know Barney Fife was Swedish.
Yeah, apparently so, because they didn't really look into him. They didn't know that this man had a violent criminal past.
They didn't check? Oh, my God.
Check. The man in question was Anders Ekluna, who was a 42-year-old truck driver from a nearby province of Strickland.
Yeah, Strickland.
It's spelled Gastrickland. Strickland. And this is a guy who had been previously in prison for multiple offenses. People who knew him described him both as social and friendly to a miserable sex felon.
Wow.
So yeah, they kind of went the gambit on him. He had had multiple police run-ins going back to 1994. He had multiple attempts of sexual assault.
Wow.
Stealing girls' underwear from a school.
Oh, wow.
Buying alcohol from children. Strangling attempts on women.
Oh, wow.
He actually was sentenced in 1998 and 2000, but he was released after only serving a couple of years.
Okay, why wasn't he the first guy they were looking at?
So they interviewed him in the first one.
Talked to him?
They did. Yeah.
Sorry, that was really high pitched.
No, it's fine. They actually did. They talked to him in the first murder too. The police did bring him in for questioning, and he, of course, denied having anything to do with it, and he hadn't seen Ingela on the day she went missing. Mm-hmm. After a few days of interrogation, the police actually went to his Saab, and they found blood on the back seat, or in the boot, as the video said, or in the trunk of the Saab, which is the boot. The boot. The tires of the Saab also matched the tracks of the one where Ingla's bike had been found.
Okay.
So while he was in custody, they took his DNA and they found similarities of his statement from 8 years earlier, because they still had the records of when they interrogated him. And so they matched it against the DNA found on Pernilla. It matched.
Wow.
So we now for sure have him on Pernilla's death. Okay. They also searched his apartment, where they found explicit images of children on his computer.
Oh,
and
boy.
Several pairs of women's underwear, which he had worn.
Okay.
This is a fun guy.
Yeah.
So on April 11th, 2008, the forensics confirmed the DNA was Anders. They pinned him to the murder of Pernilla. Using this information, they managed to get a confession from Eklund, not of just of Pernilla, but he confessed that he had murdered Ingela, and he'd take him to where the body was.
Okay.
So he led the police to an isolated area where Ingela's remains were found. According to police, her body was unrecognizable and was only able to be identified through dental records.
Oh, no.
So it was pretty bad. She had been sexually assaulted, beaten, strangled, and then burnt with gasoline. What the hell is wrong with people?
10-year-old girl.
Yes. He told police he'd been driving down the small road and he saw Ingla on the bicycle and stopped to talk to her. She tried getting away from him and kicked Anders in the leg, which set him off in a rage. So he pulled her in the car and drove off before abusing, murdering, and ditching her into a secluded area.
And then burning her body.
Yeah.
What a piece of crap.
Police later discovered that since they accidentally tipped him off earlier that they were looking for the murderer, he had attempted to clean the car of evidence, but some of her blood remained in the swamp. So he had tried to get rid of the evidence. On October 6th, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of Ingla and Pernilla. He is also presumed to be responsible for other unsolved murders across Sweden, Denmark, and Norway.
Oh, wow.
Including 16-year-old Malin Olsen, 6-year-old Yasmina Jazarij in 97, but there's no direct evidence linking him to either one. He's currently serving his life sentence in Norrtälje Correctional Facility near Stockholm. This made me sickly happy. During his time there, he has been assaulted by several inmates, beaten so badly that he's required hospital treatment. I say, yay!
Yeah, way to go.
This guy pretty much deserved it.
Oh yeah, I'm a thieving, murdering dude, but I ain't never hurt no kids.
Yeah. Ingla. Now I forgot how to pronounce it. Hogland is how it's spelled. Her funeral.
Herglund.
Ingla Herglund. Her funeral was broadcast on national TV in Sweden.
Okay.
Many people, including Ingla's mother, Karina, blame the police for not being able to stop Eklund sooner, especially after the details of Pernilla's murder emerged. Out of the 64 suspects from Gävleborg and Dalarna, Eklund was number 21 on the list.
Okay.
With the missteps from the police, these cases could have gone unsolved forever had it not been for the coincidence of one man and his camera.
And his brand new camera.
And
way to go.
Is the story of Anders Eklund.
Wow.
Told you mine was a little shorter this time.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing because we went a little over with Star Trek.
Yeah.
But again, we will talk about Star Trek again.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's a taboo subject with us that we can't ever do those again.
We can never talk about Star Trek again.
So good times.
Good times.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I loved the Star Trek discussion. I mean, I can't believe it was almost an hour. I really can't believe it went that long. I mean,
honestly, that doesn't surprise me. We've been in 2 or 3 hours. Oh my God. I was leaving. We talked about Star Trek and now it's 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Been through entirely too many of those. But, that was kind of the spawn of this podcast was exactly that, those kind of conversations. So sorry, anybody out there who was looking for history of Star Trek. We didn't give a whole lot of that. We kind of tailed off into a lot of things, into a lot of different topics. I think we covered all the shows at one point or another.
Yes.
And the movies and kind of segue back and forth with that. But, that's a glimpse into the type of conversations.
Yes.
We have normally.
Yes. I didn't understand any of that. Well, that's because you need to go and research the material and you'll understand everything we just said.
Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that we completely lost because we're like, oh yeah, so the history of Star Trek, we're here. And, oh, hey, by the way, and we tailed off into everything else. So,
let's talk about the Cardassians. Oh, I love the Cardassians.
We probably lost quite a few people in there, but we might have we might have pique some interest to people, and hopefully anybody that wants to continue conversing, they can contact you direct. Our contact information is on our webpage under the contact section.
Yes.
I won't give all those out. William pointed out somebody might accidentally spell my name wrong, which is pretty easy. So check the contact section of our webpage, which is nerderymurdery.com.
Nerdery.
You can also find links there to our Patreon, as well as links to our Instagram, Facebook, and I'm losing my voice there. Twitter. Thank you. So you can get us all there. Definitely do reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we would.
If you have ideas of things that you would like us to cover, things you're obsessed with, we'd love to research for you and do it.
We will talk about a single episode for at least a half hour if that's what we need.
Sure.
Just let us know.
If there's a true crime topic that you'd like me to cover, you can contact me direct there. And Will, if you ever want to contact him direct, because find out just why he sits here with us and listens to all this stuff,
Yes.
and probably sits there the whole time going, nerds.
Singing the song. You're a nerd, nerd.
So, so that's it for this week. And so
I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. And together we're nerdery and murdery.
Cue the music.